listening to the Air Raid Hour, a Buffalo Fanatics video experience.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into the Air Raid Hour. It is filling up quick in the comment section, so make sure you get on over there. We've already got I Am Tired in the comment section. Love that handle, by the way. Victor Ubile saying, feed me. And we're about to feed you some takes tonight. Jason Humbert coming in as well. G Seals, John Herring, Andy K, Scott Blakely, Chris Janke, Josh Clark, Jay Davis, John Herring. We got a whole bunch of people. Chris S, Billy Scott. We got a Titans fan in here. Ooh, and we're going to get there in a second, but Richard Rush in the house and Jay Davis as well. My name is Steve Mathis. You can find me on Twitter at Judge Mathis, joined as always by my co-host Dave Tilton. You can find him on Twitter at Tilt Money. Together, we are the Bills guys, and this is the Air Raid Hour presented by the Buffalo Fanatics and Sim Bowl. You can head on over to Sim Bowl, use the promo code Fanatics, get $10 off deposit, or $10 deposit bonus, I should say. And my first question to you, and we also got Brian Bowers in the house. What's up, Brian? Is Sim Titans. We're going to talk about the Titans a little bit today. Sim Titans. Mm-hmm. Should we have been reading the tea leaves and buying some Sim Titan stock before the trade happened?
Hard to say, right? Because it was it felt like that there wasn't a lot of substance behind it, but I guess there was. And like you saw what happened. Symbol put the report out yesterday. Titans jumped like 3 or 4%. The Sim Titans jumped, and the Colts took a hit on their value on the Symbol stock market. So both ways in that division were trending. So we got the Titans going up, and we've got the Colts trending down. The Texans, who we're going to talk about today, were already way down, so there's not much more they could go down from that trade. But yeah, the Titans did get a nice little bump with that trade in the Symbol stock market.
If you're a big believer in Tyrod Taylor and you got some money to throw away, and you maybe want some vested interest in Tyrod Taylor this year,
maybe Davis Mills, you believe in Davis Mills,
and you just want a vested interest. You feel like you want to be a part of that Tyrod Taylor or Davis Mills experience. Go and buy some, and you got some money to waste. Go buy some Texans, some Sim Texan stock. But Marcel Rios in the house from Brazil. That's pretty cool. Peter Miller's in the house. William Payne saying, love your show, guys. We appreciate you, William. Randy Hardman's in the house as well. James FX90. So I think we're about good and ready to go. And I wanted to start with training camp because there was some unsettling news today. I think it's good for probably the Bills as an organization, but not so good for us, the fans. And the Buffalo Bills announced today that training camp will be held at their facilities in Orchard Park this year. On top of that, the lease didn't pause because of COVID-19. So the lease with St. John Fisher is also officially up. The Buffalo Bills will have to rework that deal if they ever want to have training camp in Rochester again. So we may have seen the last of the Rochester Buffalo Bills training camp. We'll get to that in a moment. But before we do, I just mentioned a couple of things I want to mention about this. This is, as a Bills fan, this is disheartening to me because this, to me, tells me that there's maybe a path for, once again, the NFL and the Buffalo Bills are going to dictate sort of the wave of information that we're going to get this offseason. You saw last year, because of COVID, the Bills held training camp in their facility, and they essentially, the NFL and the Buffalo Bills, put a muzzle on what reporters could and could not report. You saw the Buffalo Bills state-run media correspondent, Chris Brown, get suspended for 1-2 weeks because he reported that AJ Epinesa was lining up at left and right end. So that shows you like the severity of the repercussions for giving the fans some of the information that they want to know. Like this show, we want to debate who's going to line up where on the defensive line. We're not going to be privy to that information, most likely with training camp once again at One Bills Drive. Good reporters like Matthew Perino, Sal Capaccio, Marcel Louis-Jacques, the guys over at The Athletic, Matthew Fairburn, Joe Biscaglia, they can't tell us where these guys are lining up. They can't tell us who's taking reps with the first team, who is taking reps in the second team. There's no Dean Kindig in the stands with taking his Astro notes and giving us the information that we need to have the most informed conversation. So that's really going to stink. That is really, really, really going to stink, and I'm really disappointed. But still, clips of Josh Allen in shorts, throwing tutties, I'll still get revved up in training camp, but it's just not going to be the same.
But it's not going to be the same. But I feel like, is this better for the Bills though? Right. The whole situation with St. John Fisher and the Bills, in like, obviously a lot of this has to do with the COVID. COVID really spurred much of this decision making. I think that if you're a fan, it's disappointing because you want to be able to go out and see. And even if you're not able to go, like people like us who aren't local anymore, we want to know what's going on. We're not going to necessarily get that. For the Bills as a team, for the organization, I think it's better for them personally. They get the world-class facilities. They don't have to go far from home. They can keep some things under wraps. So if you're a player, I would imagine that you're probably okay with this. You get to stay at home, you get the better facilities and so forth. What you lose is kind of that fan interaction, the family atmosphere, the family sort of experience that you would have had at St. John Fisher. So there is a trade-off, don't get me wrong. But I think that all, like, overall, as someone who selfishly is not in the area, like, I actually would prefer them to be in their own facilities. I would prefer them to be at home base. So I get it for the people who would like to go, and the deans of the world. And I saw a lot of people making comments about it today, but maybe there'll be a new locale, right? I forgot who put in, and I apologize for not giving the proper credit, but someone on Twitter today said basically the Bills training camp is now a free agent. So it's like, where do they go from here? Do they stay in future years at their home base, or is there another option for them in the future? That's where I'm going to be very interested to see.
Bobby goes, they don't give AF folks that we've turned into our father bill. Come on, Bobby. Bobby bringing salt. Bobby's bringing the salt in the comments.
I'm kind of with him, man. Like, I don't care either. Like, I'd rather them just be. Now, if they could figure out a way.
As a content creator, I am upset, but
I am upset with that. But if they could figure out a way to where they could have some open practices, like in the stadium, and allow people, like, like they couldn't do that last year, but maybe they could do that this year.
And Chris with a great point. He says, even with just 3 preseason games, we will know more than we did last offseason. So that's true. We actually get to see these guys in some game actions and where they line up in the preseason. But Randy comes in saying, stay home for camp, take advantage of those facilities. I've as much as I love St. Fisher and I love the atmosphere, like, I grew up going to training camp every year. It was one of my favorite things to do. From a fan perspective, I love it at St. John Fisher. I absolutely adore it. But I know a bunch of athletes who used to play at St. John Fisher. They hated it because the Bills got all the main facilities and they were out in a tent, like, warming up and working out in a tent. So, like, they paying, because it's a D3 school, no one's getting a scholarship. Like, they're paying up the ass to go play sports there, and they're working out in a tent because the Buffalo Bills are in town. All those different things, and on top of that, the Buffalo Bills have world-class facilities at home. So what I'd like to see the Buffalo Bills do in the future, maybe not this year because of COVID, is keep it an OP. Maybe do one practice in Rochester. I don't know how feasible that would be to try to keep the fans in Rochester happy. Build in seating so people can actually go and enjoy it, do those things at the stadium. But as much as I think we're done with training camp in St. John Fisher in Rochester, as much as I think it's over, Sean McDermott all the time talks about, and Brandon Beane too, I don't think it's just lip service. I do think Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane see a advantage or a positive for having the guys away from their families and sort of that team camaraderie thing. But at the end of the day, I think after 2 years of being in Orchard Park, I think they're going to realize that the facilities outweigh the camaraderie, and you could still figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, that team doesn't seem to be lacking in camaraderie or in familial any kind of familial issues there. I mean, we saw the Instagram videos of Feliciano and Allen. I mean, we see the guys going out and having the birthday dinners together, and like, I don't think camaraderie is an issue with this squad. So if that is an angle that you want to take to say like maybe you're missing some of that. With maybe a team you're trying to start the culture from the ground up, maybe like you're talking about 2017, that would have made a difference. I think in 2021, it's not a big deal for this team. I really don't.
Yeah. Let's get into our first topic of the evening, and that is, of course, Julio Jones. He has been traded from the Atlanta Falcons to the Tennessee Titans for a second-round pick and a fourth-round pick. This now gives the Tennessee Titans an offense. On top of having a rather solid offensive line, there's still some question marks as to who their starting right tackle is going to be between Dylan Raduns, the rookie, and Kendall Lamb, sort of the veteran journeyman swing tackle. It's an offense now that boasts Jamal Reynolds in the slot, A.J. Brown and Julio Jones on the outside, Derrick Henry at running back, and Ryan Tannehill at quarterback. Before we get into do the Bills have enough weapons, are you more scared of the Titans now than you were 2 days ago?
Not really, because they already had a really good offense. They're still going to go through Derrick Henry. They had A.J. Brown and Corey Davis and Humphreys and Jonnu Smith last year. Their defense was still bad. They didn't really do anything to, in my mind, improve the defense from a net basis this year. I mean, you've lost Bud Dupree. Yes, you drafted Caleb Farley and you've made some other moves, but you lost to Dory Jackson. So all in all, you already had kind of a good offense and a bad defense. So you're still going to have a good offense and a bad defense. And you're not going to all of a sudden go away from feeding the monster and King Henry, I don't think. And so it comes down to, does Ryan Tannehill scare you at the end of games if he needs to kind of push the ball down the field and bring you back? We saw him struggle doing that in that Ravens playoff game last year before the Ravens met up with the Bills. The Titans got out to that lead, and once they gave up that lead, they just couldn't come back from it. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that Julio's not an upgrade from Corey Davis. I'm just saying, like, am I more scared of? Like, I would say, like, they were a good team last year. They beat us. They're still a good team. They're still in the mix of the top teams in the AFC. Does this put them higher up? Maybe a notch higher. But there's also a lot of sort of holes in that team as well. So if you ask me, am I more scared of them? I mean, I would have liked Julio to go somewhere else if that's how you want me to answer it. Yeah. Like, I would have preferred for him to go to like a bottom feeder or an NFC team. Like, sure, go to the Packers and hook up with Aaron Rodgers and make him happy. Like, that would have been fine. But so that's it. That's the downside, to it. But I still respect Tennessee as a team. Like, it doesn't change my view on them that much.
And let us know in the comments section what you guys think. Has your opinion of the Tennessee Titans changed either positively or negatively since this Julio Jones deal? Are you more afraid of them than you were before this Julio trade? I like Andy coming in with this comment saying, Derrick Henry, is he a tight end? If you look at this roster, it's like Anthony Ferkster, Jeffrey Swain, Jared Pinkney. There's not a lot going on for the Tennessee Titans at tight end. So they're losing Jonnu. They're replacing with the bigger slot and Jamal Reynolds, but it's Jamal Reynolds. It's A.J. Brown, who couldn't really stay healthy.
Josh Reynolds, I think, right?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry. I said Jamal, but Josh Reynolds, A.J. Brown, who couldn't stay healthy last year, Julio Jones, who couldn't stay healthy last year, and then Dez Fitzpatrick, a guy who I think they severely overdrafted. I know there was a couple people in the comment section during draft season that loved Dez. I was not on the Dez train. I thought he was a UDFA. They're not deep at receiver. They're not deep at tight end. Their backup quarterback is Logan Woodside of the old AAFL fame. Ryan Tannehill goes down, their season's over. They're not a playoff team anymore. Derrick Henry goes down. It's Darrington Evans and like Brandon McNichol or something like that. It's
Jeremy McNichols of Hard Knocks fame a couple of years ago with Tampa.
Not a deep roster. And on defense, they're the same way. Like in that secondary, they are thin in the secondary. You don't know what you're getting from Caleb Farley this year. Janoris Jenkins is on his last legs. Not much to write home about in the secondary. I love Elijah Molden. I think Elijah Molden ultimately ends up being their nickel back, which leaves a hole at one of their other safety spots. So, and not to mention their coaching staff. Offensive coordinator Todd Downey, Arthur Smith is gone. Defensive coordinator Shane Bowen, their defensive coordinator, is gone. So, I mean, they are relying on some very unproven players as depth. They are one or two injuries at key positions away. We talked about this the other day. If Josh Allen goes down, knock on wood, our season ain't over. If Devin Singletary goes down, our season ain't over. If Stephon Diggs goes down, our season ain't over. If Trey White goes down, our season ain't over. Now, if all of them go down, our season's over. But we're not 1 or 2 injuries away from like, is this a playoff team? The Tennessee Titans are 1 or 2 key injuries away from, is this a playoff team? They're not anywhere near as deep as the Buffalo Bills. Now, on any given Sunday, do I think they can beat us? Yes. Are they probably going to be favored in that game? Yes. Did they kick our ass last year? Yes. And I'm not going to be salty and bring up the fact that they all were idiots and got COVID. I'm not going to bring it up. I'm just not going to do it. So my opinion on the Tennessee Titans haven't changed. To me, they just slightly updated Corey Davis, and they still lost a lot of talent, guys like Jonnu Smith, and players in that secondary. So I'm really not too afraid of the Tennessee Titans. In the regular season, they beat us. I wouldn't be shocked, but I don't see them as a threat on our path to the Super Bowl, if that makes sense.
No, I mean, I agree. Like, you're right. They did beat us last year. We beat them the year before. I mean, they are still a good team. I like the addition of Julio. It's a good addition for them. I mean, I think from a trade, like we talk about from a trade value perspective, I think they made out pretty well in the trade from that standpoint. They only give up a second rounder. Plus, I know there's more details to that, but like the prize of the trade was that second rounder for Atlanta. And yeah, it rests on Tannehill's arm and whether or not Derrick Henry can get rolling and keep them ahead of, not just ahead of the sticks, but ahead on the scoreboard, right? Because that's exactly what they need to do. I mean, we saw what happened in the Baltimore game I mentioned. We saw what happened in that Green Bay snow game at the end of the season last year when Rodgers and co got up to that big lead. Like Derrick Henry was a non-factor. Like it's just one of those things where Derrick Henry, you just gave him a huge deal last year. And what you're basically saying by bringing in Julio is like, we need to be better throwing the ball. And it's not going to be, we can't rely just on AJ Brown. And we're also acknowledging the fact that we lost Corey Davis and Jonnu Smith. So Julio's better than Jonnu Smith and Corey Davis probably combined. But again, how much are you going to change your offense like on a game in and game out basis? And again, like I think it was Randy who said, it's going to come down to Tannehill's arm at the end of these games anyway. So that's what it'll be.
Yeah, and this is the big key question here is, do the Bills have enough weapons to get over the top and get to the Super Bowl? Obviously, the only real changes are Emmanuel Sanders being subbed out for John Brown, Jacob Hollister being subbed out for Tyler Kroft, and the addition of possibly Marquez Stevenson and Isaiah Hodgins, if one of those two can crack the roster. Matt Breida can also be thrown into this conversation as well. So let us know in the comments section, do you think the Buffalo Bills have enough weapons? I'll start by saying I think our core four of Sanders, Davis, Beasley, Diggs, I would take that over the 4 receivers that Tennessee has: AJ Brown, Julio Jones, Josh Reynolds, and Des Fitzpatrick. I would take the Buffalo Bills wide receivers over the Tennessee Titans wide receivers, first 4, any day of the week. Are you in agreement with that? Or do you think that the high ceiling of those 2 players in Jones and AJ Brown outweighs the depth the Buffalo Bills have in their core 4 weapons?
It's a great question. I think if you're evaluating it as a group of 4, the Bills are better. But I do think that the AJ Brown Julio Jones combo is better than the Diggs Sanders / Davis. Like if you can make a case, I guess, that the Diggs Sanders / Davis is better, but I'm taking off the homer goggles a little bit here because it's going to be very hard for someone to convince me that Julio Jones combo with AJ Brown is not better than Diggs and whoever you want to put opposite. Now, is Diggs the best receiver potentially right now of that entire group, given Julio's age and given what Julio's coming off of? Yeah, I think so. But AJ Brown is better than Sanders and Davis. Like I don't think you can really make a compelling case that he's not.
Yeah, that's a great comment from D. Handsome. I think we have the perfect amount of weapons on both sides of the ball. The hardest thing now is going to get the team down to 53-man roster. And someone said up there earlier, never thought I'd say this, James FX90, but we have too many weapons. And that might be the issue for the Buffalo Bills this year, because like listen, the Tennessee Titans offense is going to be channeled through 3 guys. It's going to be AJ Brown, it's going to be Julio Jones, it's going to be Derrick Henry. Now, Josh Reynolds will get his, but like then it's Darrington Evans, who couldn't stay healthy last year, struggled. It's Anthony Firkser. It's it's Jeffrey Swain. I like the Bills' complementary players. The difference between the Titans and the Bills' offense right now, to me, isn't A.J. Brown or Julio Jones. The difference to me is Derrick Henry. Because if you look at the Buffalo Bills' backfield, it's Zach Moss, it is Devin Singletary, it is Matt Breida. But if they can get it going this year, the offensive line with maybe Cody Ford returning or Ford Lamb stepping up can get that figured out. Devin Singletary comes back again this year. Zach Moss comes back healthier than he was in his rookie year. Matt Breida adds that speed. Then you have the upside of guys like Dawson Knox and a guy that Josh Allen is comfortable with from his college years and Jacob Hollister. I like the complementary weapons more in this Buffalo Bills offense. And it's not like, okay, you can shut down one or two guys and this offense is done. Josh Allen likes to spread the football out. And there are plenty of guys here. I didn't even mention Isaiah McKenzie to spread the football out too. So the Bills certainly, I think, have the right weapons to make the Super Bowl. Obviously, they were in the AFC Championship game last year. The question for them is going to be figuring out a way, because there's so many of them, to make it work. Because we're going to get to, and we can get to it now, the core four.
But before we do that, just really quick, we talk about the Titans and being like top heavy, right? With Brown and Julio and Henry. And you say like, well, the Chiefs, they funnel their offense through, let's just say Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Kelsey, and Tyreek Hill. But what's the main difference, right? The Chiefs' complementary pieces are fantastic, right? You have Mecole Hardman, you had Jamarcus Robinson, you had, for a little bit there, he's not there anymore, Demetrius Harris, he's gone. You had Pringle, right? Like, so you had Le'Veon, like you had guys on the Chiefs that when you think of them and you immediately think of Kelsey and Hill, but they have complementary guys that will hurt you. And that's what the Bills have. They have complementary guys that will hurt you. And I think that's why from a group standpoint, top to bottom, the Bills are better. At very, very, very top, Henry, Brown, and Julio is a very nice trio, but there's not much else after that. And Marcus says 11 people caught touchdowns. And that was, we almost had the record, I think, if who was it that dropped it? Who was it that dropped it? Taiwan Jones. Yeah. Damn.
But
all right. Anyway, we can move on now.
But it's just interesting too. I think even though he got a second team All-Pro vote, and we can get to this now, even though he got a second team All-Pro vote, and he's a very good player, Cole Beasley is not going to be seen as like a transitional player because he's a slot only. Emmanuel Sanders is getting up there in age. Gabriel Davis still has to meet that upside if he wants to be considered. Like A.J. Brown, Julio Jones, 2 All-Pros. Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, 2 All-Pros. I understand that he got that 1 vote, but I don't think a lot of people around the league recognize Cole Beasley as that type of player because he's not that kind of transcending player who can do multiple things. He's a niche slot guy. So it's still looked at like it's Stephon Diggs and then a bunch of really good role players. Whereas other teams are looked at like they have 2 alphas. 2 guys you can feed the football all the time. And that brings us to the expectations for the core 4 this year, because I was listening to Joe Marino's podcast this morning, Locked On Bills. Give it a listen. He did a really good job of explaining why, despite the fact that there wasn't a lot of roster turnover this year, the Buffalo Bills are going to be a significantly better football team than they were the year before. It was a really good podcast. And one of the statistics he mentioned on offense was we have replaced Emmanuel Sanders with John Brown. John Brown was expected to be a big part of this offense last year. Injuries plagued him. He played 42% of the snaps last season. That allowed guys like Gabriel Davis to step up. That allowed guys like Isaiah McKenzie to maybe see more touches than he would have gotten. With a healthy Emmanuel Sanders, if these core 4 stay healthy, is there enough footballs to go around? What are your expectations for the core 4? What roles do each guy fill?
I think there's enough footballs to go around, and this is also why I am on the don't trade for Zach Ertz and not valuing the tight end as high as maybe a lot of people are, because there are only so many balls to go around. Like I was looking, I pulled up the numbers from last year. Gabriel Davis caught 35 balls. John Brown caught 33. Okay. Last year, Beasley 82, Diggs 127. So even if, and this is a year that Josh Allen threw the ball almost 600 times, so even if Stephon Diggs only catches 120 balls or 110, let's say, even if he catches, in that range, and Beasley comes in a little lower, let's say 65 to 75 balls, you're talking about there's still only about 80 or so receptions to to reallocate out to the other receivers, and that includes Davis now and Sanders. So this is where I caution people to, when we're talking about Davis, for example, especially, like, don't worry. I wouldn't worry so much statistically about him if his numbers are better this year than they were last year. Like, if his numbers are about the same as they were last year, we're going to be pretty happy. I think if you see some of those catches maybe come away from Beasley, come away from Diggs just because of the attention they're going to get, and you see an uptick into what John Brown put forth on only a limited number of snaps, 33 receptions. Between Sanders and Davis, I don't know that there's going to be, like, these guys aren't each going to catch 50 balls. Like, we have to get that through our heads. Like, they're not, it's just not going to happen, right? I mean, Isaiah McKenzie caught 30 balls last year, so maybe some catches come away from him if he's not in the mix as much. But, like, to me, the ceiling for guys like Sanders and Davis are like maybe 40 to 45 catches apiece. And to me, that would be like the absolute most, because then you're talking about, like, well, we still want to get Dawson Knox involved, and he only had 24 catches last year. So my point being is that the Bills threw the ball almost 600 times last year, and complementary guys like Davis and Brown still only caught 30-ish catches, right? So my expectations for the core four are going to be similar numbers from Diggs that he had last year, maybe a little less. Similar numbers for Beasley that he had, maybe a little less. And some of those receptions that went to McKenzie get reallocated to Sanders and Davis, and some of those receptions that come away from Beasley and Diggs get reallocated to Davis and Sanders. But I don't think you're going to see some like monumental sort of statistical seasons from those guys.
And continue to let us know what you guys think in the comment section. What are your expectations for the core four this year? I know for me, in terms of role wise, what's got me most excited is Stephon Diggs is your alpha. And the combination of Cole Beasley in the slot, combination of Emmanuel Sanders on the outside, platooning probably with Gabe Davis on the outside, and then Gabe Davis in those four wide receiver sets being a big slot. If you cover Stephon Diggs, that's fine. Those other three can eat and eat and eat. Your only issue would be if Stephon Diggs keeps getting doubled and you can't get him the football. But I think Josh Allen proved last year he can get Stephon Diggs the touches he needs. So this is a football team here. These four guys, like Bill's Blitzkrieg said it on Twitter today, three of the best route runners in football: Emmanuel Sanders, Stephon Diggs, Cole Beasley. Josh Allen's going to have a chance to just spread them out. And, when you're playing, we're going to talk about the Houston Texans today. Lovie Smith, Tampa 2. He needs to, he can dink and dunk the football all the way down the field with these guys, especially with other guys too, like Dawson Knox, maybe Jacob Hollister. He can dink and dunk the ball down the field all day. He wants to stretch the football field. You got guys like Emmanuel Sanders who can stretch that football field, Gabe Davis who can stretch that football field, Stephon Diggs who can stretch that football field, and then who's going to be working in the middle of the football field? Cole Beasley. So there are just so many weapons. I don't want to put a number or a fraction or percentage on it because you did such a good job of doing so. But here's a question I have for you. Here's a question I do have for you. This could also be Cole Beasley's last year in Buffalo too. I wouldn't be shocked. I know he's got 2 years left on his deal. It wouldn't shock me if this was Cole Beasley's last year in Buffalo. Emmanuel Sanders is obviously on that 1-year deal. Do you think there's any way in which Emmanuel Sanders can create enough chemistry with Josh Allen that he gets more receptions, targets, yards, etc., than a Cole Beasley?
Wow. That's a great question. I don't think so. Unless he like pretty much takes over the slot receiver duties and they phase Cole Beasley kind of out of the offense, because like you said, he's a niche receiver. He's only playing slot. Whereas when Davis was on the field last year, he was playing outside and in, and we know Diggs can play anywhere. Sanders can play both. So like if Sanders is racking up that many catches, like you're basically saying he's taking over slot receiver duties, and you're rolling out there three receiver sets, not 4. And you're rolling 3 receiver sets with Sanders in the slot, Davis on the outside, and Diggs on the outside, and Beasley's not on the field. I don't see that happening. Now, could I see a scenario where Sanders really creeps up on receptions and gets close to Beasley? Yeah, I could see that, but I don't see a situation where like he just takes over that role completely and like Beasley's just not on the field. I would be very surprised.
Yeah, and then some great questions rolling in, or some great comments rolling in from the people in the Mafia. Andy K saying, "Hey, Emmanuel Sanders probably is going to want to stay in Buffalo. He loves Josh Allen, and as he gets older, the money on a guy like Emmanuel Sanders is going to get less and less. But there are some guys knocking on the door, and there's been a couple of comments here in the comment section, alluding to guys like Jacob Hollister, who we're going to talk about on Thursday when we talk about the tight ends, and a guy like Isaiah Hodgins as well." So let's transfer this conversation now to the depth in the wide receiver room. Who fills out the wide receiver room? Because I look at this, obviously you got guys, like, Duke Williams has been here forever. You don't want to discount a guy like that, but it's like, you've had your shot, dude. I honestly can't believe the Buffalo Bills haven't released him and let him go find his own opportunity.
They need us content creators. They need to give us content creators, some like Rico, something to talk about, like converting Duke to tight end.
But Crew Moreau is a sleeper, obviously, because of his special teams ability. He was mentioned a couple of times at OTA. Tanner Gentry he's the double sleeper here because he has that relationship with Josh Allen from their time at Wyoming. But to me, it's a 3-man race for the 2 spots left on the roster, and I really hope that they keep 7, because I'd love to see all 3 of these guys. And it's the 3 guys pictured: Isaiah Lil Dirty McKenzie, Marquez Stevenson, the rookie 6th-round pick from Houston, and Isaiah Hodgins, last year's 6th-round pick from the University of Oregon State, or Oregon State University, who never actually got in the field because of injuries. 2 of these players are alike, obviously, and McKenzie and Stevenson both can be vying for kick and punt returner duties. They're that smaller gadget type receiver. And then Isaiah Hodgins, it's kind of hard to find a role for him because Emmanuel Sanders is now here. Gabriel Davis can continue in that big slot position. But Isaiah Hodgins, again, continues to make plays in OTAs. The analytics community loves him as a receiving target. He's a really crisp route runner for a guy his size. I mentioned a show, like it might have been last week or the week before. You cut him, you ain't getting him to the practice squad. So it's going to be really interesting. What are your thoughts on how the bottom half, and I want the people in the comment section to let us know as well, what are your thoughts on the bottom half of the wide receiver room? 6 receivers, 7 receivers, who stays, who goes?
Really makes you miss a guy who could do punt and kick return, both, like an Andre Roberts, doesn't it? Because I know Stevenson was practicing punt returns at rookie practice, but McKenzie's the proven guy, and Geelong Video Guy says Isaiah McKenzie is proven he stays, and he's going to probably be the first man up to do punt returns. Not sure about kick returns, but this is the problem, right? You have Stevenson, who's kind of been that kick returner in his career at Houston. We covered in detail his statistics on returning kicks in college, over 26 yards per return, 3 return TDs in his career. And we know McKenzie's had more experience in the NFL returning punts than he has kicks. So you hate to say that, like, you're going to have to use 2 roster spots on guys who are both going to do 2 different types of return duties, which is why it could come down to, if Stevenson can prove that he can do both, then maybe he doesn't necessarily beat out McKenzie, but he beats out Hodgins because of what McKenzie can do. I personally think that roster building wise, to keep the best guys on the team, you should keep 7. That's my personal philosophy.
And especially with Beasley getting up there in age and Emmanuel Sanders getting up there in age. It's not just about this season too, it's about the future.
Right.
I know McKenzie's on a 1-year deal, but he could have a future here beyond this year, as maybe the permanent 5th receiver, especially if he can carve out a niche in the return game. Isaiah Hodgins is a guy who you got 4 years under contract for real cheap. A guy who can maybe play some slot for you as a guy, like, despite his size, as a guy like Cole Beasley ages out. This is a different type of slot receiver. And then obviously Marquez Stevenson is another guy. That speed is just something you might, and that youth, the draft pick you invested in him, is just not something you're going to want to give up on.
It's just
losing him.
It's just one of those things to me where, if you're really trying to keep the 53 best guys, like these 3 guys, the last of these 3 guys, whether it's Hodgins, whether it's any of them really, because, like, you could make the case that McKenzie could be cut if Stevenson proves that he can do punt and kick returns. I'd rather keep the 7 receivers, keep 3 tight ends. Let Spencer Brown be your blocking tight end. Let him be your big blocking tight end that in the Lee Smith role, and keep Sweeney, Knox, and Hollister at tight end, and just let Brown kind of be that 4th guy. The Bills in McDermott's time have never kept 7 receivers, and Chris can fact check me on that. I'm pretty sure I fact checked myself on it, but they have not ever kept 7 in McDermott's tenure. So it would be a first, but times maybe are changing, right? It's a different team than it was when he first got here. It's a different offense. It's a pass-heavy offense. We already noted how much the Bills ran for receiver sets on a percentage basis more than any other team last year other than the Arizona Cardinals. So that fourth receiver to me, and then this situation that pushes every receiver down the depth chart up a little bit from an importance standpoint, right? The seventh receiver is more important than probably your fourth or fifth tight end. So look, it's easy for me to sit here right now and say keep 7 and just say I'm not going to decide which of these guys gets cut. But if it was me, I probably hope to hell that Stevenson can do punt and kick return, keep him, keep Hodgins, and probably have to let McKenzie go, even though he's the proven guy. That's just where I'm sitting right now on June 7th, right? Because I don't know if Stevenson would make it to the practice squad.
There's a bunch of really great questions or comments in the comment section. It's almost like a game of who's most likely to get on the practice squad. And Randy Harmon said you could probably protect them once they get onto the practice squad. The only issue here is the initial release. So you release them on August, whatever. There's no protecting them once you cut them. They're cut. Any team can claim them off of waivers. It's once they clear waivers that you can then sign them to your practice squad and protect them. So if I'm looking, and here's my maybe semi-hot take here, I think the easiest one of these 3 guys to sneak onto the practice squad, and that's if the rules continue where you don't have to, if there are really no rules on who you can put on your practice squad this year, like we had a ton of
Isaiah McKenzie.
I think Isaiah McKenzie might be the easiest one to put on the practice squad because he sat on the free agent market for a long time. He ended up coming back to Jamal Agnew, got that 3-year, $21 million deal. I comped him and McKenzie as the same kind of player. I was like, look to see where Agnew ends up for what money to figure out what the market is for Isaiah McKenzie. Isaiah McKenzie gets 1 year, $1 million in Buffalo. Like he said, he had some nibbles from like Arizona and Chicago and a couple of other teams. And I don't doubt that. I don't doubt that 6 to 7 guys or 6 to 7 teams were interested in Isaiah McKenzie. But after training camp, when you've gotten to see a whole bunch of guys, when you've gotten to see what you have on your depth chart, guys you signed or drafted because you couldn't get Isaiah McKenzie, to me, of all the guys, I think is the easiest one to fit on that practice squad. Whether he'd want to be there or not, I don't know. Probably not. Would be Isaiah McKenzie. But that being said, I would like them to keep 7 receivers. And one of the comments in the comment section was Isaiah McKenzie in like a red zone, or not Isaiah McKenzie, Isaiah Hodgins is like a semi tight end red zone role.
Yep.
Yeah, like that his red zone, his SIS statistics in the red zone in college were unbelievable. Something like he dropped 1 ball in his career in the red zone. The number of touchdowns he caught compared to the number of targets he had, the number of first downs he had, the number I don't have the statistics in front of me right now, but they were insane. And I do think Isaiah Hodgins has a role in this football field. And we're losing our mind over 53. Now we have to figure out 46 man or 47 man on game day.
This was the issue we talked about in the pre-draft process. If you remember, we were talking about receiver, and we were like, the Bills either need to draft a receiver early, like an Elijah Moore, to like basically remove all doubt as to who they were keeping, or they needed to take a guy that was clearly going to be like the practice squad type, like the Trey Walker that we signed as a UDFA, or the Cade Johnson, right, type. But what we did was kind of like an in-between. We took Stevenson in the 6th round, I think it was, right? So it was kind of like one of those situations where you're like, it's right at kind of the cusp of like, this is a guy that we probably wouldn't have been able to sign as a UDFA, probably was going to get drafted if we didn't draft him either the rest of that 6th round or in the 7th. And we didn't draft a receiver early. So now we're in this conundrum of like, how do we figure out this receiver room because of the way we drafted him? This is why kind of all along I wanted to draft the defensive back who had return ability so that we wouldn't have to have this discussion. But poor Stevenson is in purgatory. I mean, yes, you could try to sneak him through. And I know statistically it's not a huge number of guys that get claimed on cut day directly to other teams. Most times those guys make it through. I believe the percentage is something like really high. Someone can check me, but I believe it's probably over 90%, right?
But you also got to think they're a free agent too. They can go sign on someone else's practice squad. If they don't see a chance to get onto this football field this season, and they see a chance to get onto another team.
Well, that's what McKenzie did with us, right?
Yeah.
I think, right?
We had that conversation about Jake Fromm last year. Like, even if Jake Fromm didn't get claimed off of waivers by another team last year and we snuck him onto the practice squad, what was to stop him from going to a team without a real backup quarterback? Because the dude like would have sat in the practice squad all year and pretty much done essentially what he did in the regular season, not even get a chance to talk to his teammates. So
I do like that Stevenson was practicing returning punts though in practice, because if he can do both punts and kicks, that makes him a lot more valuable as a guy that they might keep. Now, we know McDermott is not likely to trust a rookie to do that, but
is this something that we're overthinking? Is it really, like, could it be, and I get that we haven't gotten to training camp yet and competition, et cetera, but like, could this be a situation in Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott's mind? And obviously things can change once they see them on the football field. Could this just be all along? It is Marquez Stevenson versus Isaiah McKenzie. May the best man win. If Stevenson wins, thank you, Isaiah. You've been great here. We wish you nothing but the best. If Isaiah wins, cross your fingers and hope Stevenson gets onto the practice squad. Is it a situation where it's one or the other? Like, and if you want to keep both, do you have to lose Hodgins?
Well, I'm gonna be annoyed if that happens and a guy like Nate Becker like makes the team as a tight end. Like that's where I'm gonna get, like, nothing against Nate Becker or like even Reggie Gilliam or like, I'd rather keep one of these dudes than any of them, right? I'd rather keep one of these dudes than, like, I think that or quarterback is probably where I chop off an active roster player. Punt returns are more difficult, so no rookie. Yeah, I mean, I get that, Richard. This is why, like, it sucks not having Andre Roberts. I hope people now really who maybe didn't appreciate Andre Roberts as much because they didn't think he was offered anything at receiver, which is pretty true. He did two things for us on special teams, so he was valuable. Yeah, we may be overthinking it. Like, I don't know.
On the voice of reason here, we're overthinking it.
Yeah.
So
that's what we do. That's what we do.
I think it's best to now turn to our second topic for today, and that's our preview of the Houston Texans, who is one of our opponents this season. Houston has had one early 2000s Buffalo Bills of an off season. Like, I'm talking like end of the Ralph Wilson era type of off season for the Houston Texans. Total anarchy within that fan base against the owners, the McNair family, Deshaun Watson getting into that legal trouble. I look at this Houston Texans team, Vegas odds 4.5 wins. Tim Kelly's got that spread offense going there in in Houston. He did pretty well offensively with the personnel he had last year in Deshaun Watson, but that defense was the worst in the league. I think one of the worst. They're going to be switching from a 34 defense to a Tampa 2 under Lovie Smith, their new defensive coordinator. At the end of the day, I don't care who's on this Houston Texans roster, talent wise, and it's not that great. They might be. Is Deshaun Watson their Jack Eichel? Maybe, I don't know, but their coaching staff is one of the worst coaching staffs in league history. David Culley has no business being a head coach in the National Football League. And I understand the conversation people had. They're like, well, he's an African-American candidate, give him a chance. He's been in the league a really long time. White candidates, fall upward all the time. Why not let an African-American candidate fall upward for once? But at the end of the day, like, this guy did nothing for Josh Allen when he was in Buffalo. He got to Baltimore to try to fix their passing game, and it wasn't good. When he was in Kansas City, Alex Smith didn't throw a touchdown to his receivers the year he was the wide receivers coach. Like, this guy's an awful coach. He's not good. Tim Kelly's only called plays for half of a season. Lovie Smith is over the hill, and he's transitioning a 34 defense to a Tampa 2 defense. The only two coaches worth a damn on the coaching staff are Tim Kelly and Pep Hamilton, the quarterback's coach. And that's not going to be able to overcome the lack of talent in the roster. You cannot lose to the Houston Texans this year. You can't. Plain and simple.
Can I? Yeah, you're right. Can I sidetrack with? I want to make a live bet right now with Truth to Hearts on this. Again, just before we get back to the Texans. He says, I think Roberts is overrated. Success was due to the 10 guys blocking for him. He never made anyone miss. He just ran straight. So if his numbers are good, then it's because of blocking. I'll make a bet with you right now, Truth to Hearts, that not a single guy on the Bills roster this year will match the total return yards that Andre Roberts had from last year. It's not going to happen. Like I'll even give you odds on it if you want, but you can DM me if you want, and we'll get that going because there's not a guy on this roster that's going to have as many return yards this year as Roberts did last year. Anyway, okay, so all right, good. Let's do it. I like that. It's a friendly wager. We'll do something fun. Yeah, you're right. You're right. I mean, look, he had the highest average per return of anyone with more than 2 returns in the NFL. He had the second most return yards gross, only behind Cordero Patterson. Okay. Anyway, getting back to the Texans, you're right, I think, and this coaching staff screams to me like that this organization is not ready to move forward with sort of the times in the NFL. Like, you're bringing back a retread defensive coordinator in Lovie Smith, who in his interviews, he was talking about how he didn't change anything from his scheme. He thinks that going back from college to the NFL, it's just going to work better because it's the NFL. I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but you know what I'm talking about, that interview. And Tim Kelly's probably the best coach of this bunch, right, with the spread offense. But the problem, again, is without Deshaun Watson running that offense, is Tyrod going to be able to run this spread offense, this Tim Kelly spread offense? I don't know. That's not really his style. So it's a dumpster fire. 4.5 wins in a 17-game season sounds about right to me. I mean, you can kind of fall into 3 or 4 wins in a year, even if you're not a very good team. I mean, look at the Jets last year. They won 2 games somehow. So, and the Tampa 2 defense that Lovey's going to bring, their defense was bad last year. The only saving grace they may have this year is they actually have some better personnel on defense this year, but it's still going to be bad. Very bad.
David Culley has the personality of Dick Duran. Literally, you've just hired a Dick Duran clone as your head coach, the monotone, keep the ship steady. The analogy I gave to you and Kendall before the show started was going into the season with David Culley as your head coach is like going into a football season with Andy Dalton as your starting quarterback. There's just no ceiling for you. There's nothing. At best, you're getting mediocre. And I'm not talking about young Andy Dalton. I'm talking about Chicago Bears this year, Andy Dalton. That's what you're going into the year with, that you're starting quarterback as your head coach. And on top of that, look at the talent that you have on this. And I made this comment too before we hopped on air. A lot of really average play. It seems to me like they're just adding all the average players in free agency and hoping the competition brings out the best of them. Because it's best case scenario, they have Deshaun Watson. Worst case, they have Tyrod Taylor or Davis Mills. They have David Johnson, Phillip Lindsay, Mark Ingram. They added Rex Burkhead at running back. Brandon Cooks, Nico Collins, Randall Cobb, Kiki QT at wide receiver. Andre Roberts is in the mix as well. A couple of other guys, Isaiah Coulter. It's Akins. It's Brevin Jordan, the rookie. It's Kahale Waring at tight end. I do like their offensive line in Tunsil, Sharping, Britt, Cannon, and Howard. Roger Johnson's in there as a really good swing tackle as well. And then you look over on defense. A lot of really high draft picks and guys like Merciless, Blacklock, Shaq Lawson, a redemption story, and Malik Collins, who had success in a Tampa 2 scheme with Lovey, or a Tampa 2 scheme in Dallas, now coming back to a Tampa 2 scheme under Lovie Smith. Depth like Jonathan Grenard, Duke Ejiofor, DeMarcus Walker, obviously Amenhu and Taylor, Vincent Taylor, former Buffalo Bill defensive tackle. Yeah. Really deep at linebacker and guys like Cunningham, Kirksey, Wallow, Hewitt, Pierre Lewis. Rather thin in the secondary, in my opinion, in Hargreaves, Roby, King, Johnson, Lonnie Johnson, the converted corner, and Justin Reed. So not a lot going for them. Roby and King are nice in that secondary. Hargreaves not so nice, and not a lot of depth behind them, especially at the boundary corner. So to me, it is inexcusable if this is even a close football game. It's absolutely inexcusable. The Buffalo Bills should come in. Is it even a home game? I did not double check the schedule.
Yeah, it is, because I think the furthest west the Bills go is Kansas City, if I'm not mistaken.
This game should be an absolute massacre. This should be the game that when the season is over, we replay it over and over and over again on NFL Game Pass, just as our football porn. This is what this game should be. It's the Miami Dolphins game from this year, or this, you know what I'm saying? The Week 17 Miami Dolphins game. I put that on all the time when I'm feeling down, when I'm feeling low.
Home game October 3rd. Yeah. First game in October. Yeah.
That's what this football game should be. It should be our off-season football porn. We should steamroll these guys. Steamroll. If this game was within, I understand that a W is a W, but if this game is within 2 touchdowns, I'll be pissed.
Randy's right. This game should be a Trubisky special. Get Trubisky in there in the fourth quarter in this one. Yeah, I mean, the only way the Texans have any chance in this game, assuming like nothing weird between now and then, is like just wave after wave of like, okay, rotating Ingram, rotating Lindsey, rotating David John, like that's it. And they have a decent offensive line. So maybe if it's Tyrod or Deshaun, maybe that the quarterback's running a little bit. Like I'm just trying to like grasp at straws here as to how they could potentially stay in the game. But defensively, like I like some of the fits for if you actually ran a well-run Tampa 2 or a cover 2, kind of like the Bills do. Pierre Lewis is a good coverage linebacker. They lost JJ Watt and replaced him with Shaq Lawson. So Merciless is your main pass rusher now. Like, how's he going to be without JJ Watt on the other side of them and a guy like Shaq Lawson who isn't really known as a pass rusher? Like, I don't know, man. This like team is in such shambles, and it's kind of a shame because they were like a really good team just like 2 years ago. We remember they beat us in the playoffs. They went to Kansas City and had the big lead on them before they blew it. I mean, it's a shame.
The bacteria that is the virus that is the 40 or the New England Patriots effect is pretty is
Truth to Hearts is
they go everywhere in Detroit. I guess John Robinson had some success in Tennessee, but yeah, they go everywhere and they ruin it. Friend of the show, Lawrence Owen, we had him on before the wild card game because he covers the Colts, so he's obviously very familiar with the AFC South. Says he interviewed a Houston Chronicle journalist who covers the Texans for the past 6 years, and he thinks the Texans will probably be the winner of the 2022 first overall pick. They're not good. Like, they are not good.
Now, when you looked at the Vegas, did you see? Are they the lowest? They can't be the lowest win total, right?
I did not look.
I'm gonna check right now. I just
Googled them specifically, but that's got to be near the basement, right? In a 17-game season, 4.5.
Let me look. So I'm just scrolling through the teams really quick. We've got Texans 4.5.
Lions will probably be in that.
Wow. No, they're the lowest. They literally are the lowest. The next, there's a 6.5 for the Bengals. Take the over on that.
I will. They're bad.
The Lions 5. Okay, that the Lions 5 is the next closest to them, and then 7.5 or something. Yeah, so they're second worst right now. Yeah. They're the second worst win total.
And the thing is like the Bengals too. At the end of the day, it comes down to coaching in the National Football League. Dan Campbell. Maybe he works out, maybe he doesn't, but he sure as hell is like making a joke of himself with the way he talks about biting kneecaps and wearing helmets and all those stupid things that he does. David Culley and Zach Taylor, 3 of the worst head coaches in the National Football League. Obviously 2 of them haven't stepped on a football field yet, but in my opinion, those are 3 of the worst football.
Well, and the thing working against and the Bengals are working in an uphill battle too, right? With having to go against Baker and Lamar and obviously Steelers, but that team could be good with a good head coach. The Bengals team.
Ownership is a big key too. I mean, Houston's got one of the worst owners in McNair, and Cincinnati's got probably the worst owner in Mike Brown because he still thinks it's 1975 and he runs his organization like it. Campbell's leaning into that Rex Ryan persona. I don't know if he's as arrogant because I think that I think that Dan Campbell is more of like a gritty, like let's run Oklahoma drills for 45 minutes. Let's eat dirt before the game type of, bite that off a chicken type of guy, where Rex Ryan's like we're going to go kick your ass and eat a snack type of guy. Like there's less arrogance, I think, to Dan Campbell's persona than there is Rex Ryan, but they both wear helmets to press conferences. So, Chris Janke, Zach Taylor is a bad head coach and bad former president.
Oh, remember what Kevin Garrard, our Finsider, he said when Campbell was the interim head coach in Miami that like the players liked him. Like it seemed like, but the players liked Rex Ryan too. So it didn't really work out for him either. So we'll see. The The one thing working for the Lions maybe is that, like, if Aaron Rodgers is not in that division, there's question marks about Jared Goff. There's question marks about who's going to start for Chicago with Fields and Dalton, and Minnesota with Kirk Cousins. Like, Kellen Mond's now there. Like, that division could have a whole different looking set of quarterbacks here in the near future. So if you're a Lions fan, Nate Asper, if you're watching our one of our bloggers, maybe there's hope for you. Maybe there's hope.
Back half of the show is presented by White Claw. There are no
Ooh,
laws.
Black cherry, nice flavor choice.
There are no laws when you're drinking Claws. We're going to bring in producer Kendall now, which means that we're not doing a mock draft tonight. Not quite nearly that season yet. But we're going to get Kendall's thoughts on the Houston Texans and the wide receivers. And while we get Kendall's thoughts on maybe some of the things that have gone on so far this show, yes, nice new backdrop for Kendall. And let us know what you guys want to talk about for the back half of the show today. So whatever it is you guys want to talk about, let us know in the comment section and we will get started. But first, Kendall, what are your thoughts on the Buffalo Bills wide receiver core? Anything, whether it's the core four or the depth of this roster, that you want to get off your chest before we get into the Q&A?
Well, I mean, it's really just tough to navigate what we want the Bills to do in terms of who they should keep. Like, Till, I think you said it best when you were like, yeah, right now, June 7th, I'm like, yeah, I want Stevenson to do the kick return and punt return. That way we can cut McKenzie loose and look towards the future, just because McKenzie's on a 1-year deal. But we can't definitively say that we want Stevenson because we don't know what he can and can't do. And like you said, we don't know.
He could have Butterfingers in camp. He might not be able to catch a punt. We have no idea.
Yeah. McDermott doesn't want to trust rookies with that kind of responsibility. Like, ball security is of the utmost importance when it comes to kick returns and punt returns. So, yeah, it's really tough to pinpoint who the 5th and 6th guys are going to be. I think it's just really tough when it comes to deciding we want to move on from Hodgins or Stevenson, because they're both unknowns and we all are so excited about that unknown. And we all know what we're seemingly going to get from McKenzie. And it's not like what we got from McKenzie last year is bad. It was actually extremely productive. There's just something about the positivity that we have now in this new era of the Buffalo Bills, where it's like every rookie is in a prime position to succeed because they don't have so much pressure on them to be an instant impact starter. Now it's like they can just play a nice role on this team, kind of like Gabe Davis did at the start of last year. And then you see him earn more and more snaps. So it's like that's the kind of thing we want to see from Isaiah Hodgins. We want to see from Marquez Stevenson, but we just don't know yet. We don't know until we're going to get to see more clips from training camp.
Yeah. We got Lawrence Owen, again, our man over at Cold Slaw, coming with a great question. He says, are you guys comfortable with having to blitz to get consistent pressure, or do you want the Bills to get younger, better at traditional pass rush? And I think that's a great question, too, because I think the way the Buffalo Bills want to play defense is they want to rush as few people as possible. And they want to drop those guys back into zone coverage. So I would assume traditional pass rush is the way to go. But with the personnel that they have, with an older Jerry Hughes, an older Mario Addison, more of a length and strength guy in Carlos Basham and Gregory Rousseau, I don't know how much traditional pass rush there is there. Maybe AJ Epinesa is like the one player I look at as the future of as a traditional pass rusher. But Sean McDermott's always been known as that guy who blitzes the nickel corner, blitzes the safety, blitzes A gap, B gap, blitzes the linebackers. So I honestly think that if I had to choose between what was going to be more successful for the Buffalo Bills this year, design blitzes or traditional pass rush, I think I'd oddly pick the unconventional blitzes or the blitz packages. What are your thoughts on this, Dave?
What'll be more successful? Yeah, I think you're right. What I would want, traditional pass rush. Those are two different things, unfortunately. I think we saw this last year. We saw Trey White coming on blitzes. We saw AJ Klein coming on blitzes last year. We saw the lack of getting to the quarterback from guys like Addison and Hughes, and obviously Epinesa later on in the season. I'm not really counting him in that mix because we didn't really have any expectations for him. But this season, it's a little bit different, right? You have Addison's probably going to be back with the contract he's on. Epinesa going into year 2. Hughes is going to be back. where are Rousseau and Basham going to rush from in the early stages of their career? Is it going to be traditional third down pass rush for them, or are they going to play more of a sort of light defensive line on third downs, or maybe you have Basham and Oliver on the inside and you have a guy like Rousseau, on the Basham and Oliver on the inside, and you have a guy like Rousseau on the outside on third down. So success is probably going to come early in the season from the blitzing. I think maybe the Bills could shift towards a more traditional pass rush with, if you want to call just 4 guys rushing the passer traditional. That's how I'm going to define it. I'm not going to say like, oh, it's got to be from the edge. It's just going to be 4 guys, maybe towards the middle or later parts of the season when Rousseau and, guys like Rousseau and Basham kind of have some games under them. So I'm with you, Steve. I think I'd oddly pick that as well as far as what would be more successful.
Kendall, what are your thoughts? Both what you think is going to happen and maybe in your personal choice between design blitzes being more successful or the traditional pass rush being more successful?
I kind of think they're going to stick to the 4-man rush stuff. I think they're going to get more creative with it, though. That's what I would like to see, and that's actually what I think they're probably going to do. I think they're going to sprinkle in blitzes a little bit more because we've heard these rumors of they're probably going to play more base 4-3 because of the ways teams are going to combat them playing nickel and tossing 2 tight ends out there against us. So if they're running more 4-3 and you see AJ Klein on the field, like, it leads me to believe we're probably going to blitz more because AJ Klein's just kind of a liability when he's in that no man's land. I like to see him more with an assignment to blitz and go penetrate gaps and things like that. But I think with the addition of Basham and Rousseau, I really think we're going to get more creative with our rushes on the front 4. I think we're going to see a lot more stunts, especially if we keep someone like Zimmer. Like, Zimmer can bend around an edge, like, unlike most defensive tackles. Same with Oliver. Like, I wouldn't like to see it from either of those guys, but those are 2 guys that could definitely do it because they have the athleticism to do it. And furthermore, I think Basham's ready right off the bat. Like, I think we could see him right off the bat start to produce pressures and stuff like that on third downs. I wouldn't be shocked if we see him as a third down specialist early and work into more of an early down role as the season progresses.
And do you see him doing that from the inside though, or the outside, Kendall?
I see him doing that from the outside more. I think we'd probably see him on the inside on, like, it's tough to find early passing downs, early and obvious passing downs, but I think that's when we would see him on the inside.
Like 2-minute drills maybe and things like that.
Yeah, things like that. I think for my money, I would rather have Rousseau on that inside. I think his length against guards who typically just have shorter arms, I think that's a huge mismatch. And when it comes to Basham, I think he has an athletic and, like, quick twitchy mismatch against either tackles or guards. But I'd like to see it more on the edge because I think he's got a good package of moves when it comes to rushing inside or outside on that tackle specifically.
Kendall, another question specific to you, because I know you're more of an X's and O's guy than us. I believe it's called a stunt, correct? So, like, say Gregory Rousseau is lined up at defensive tackle. Carlos Basham is lined up at left end. Basham at the snap goes at the guard, and Rousseau sort of loops around and goes at the tackle. So they switch. That's called stunt, correct?
Right.
And then I think that's something the Buffalo Bills are going to utilize a lot this year.
Exactly.
Guys like Ed Oliver, guys like Gregory Rousseau are going to shift and take on the tackles, even though they're lined up against the guard snap. Guys like Efe Obada, guys like Carlos Basham can go and they can try to use their strengths against the interior. And what it also brings about is more A-gap and B-gap blitzes through that too, because the tackle gets confused, the guard gets confused. Guys like Matt Milano can take advantage of that. Guys like Tremaine Edmonds can take advantage of that. Safeties can take advantage of that. Nickel corners can take advantage of that. Matt Milano can take advantage of that. So I think that's something that we might see more from the Buffalo Bills this year. Ton of great questions in the comment section. We're going to get to most of them. John says, why is Hughes all of a sudden not going to be able to rush the passer? I don't think anyone on this show has slandered Jerry Hughes, because I think he's almost, him and Ed Oliver are consensus amongst us about who's going to lead the team in sacks this year. But Brandon Beane has even made that comment, like, we need to get these older guys more just in the situations where they can pin their ears back and do what they do best. These young guys like AJ Epinesa, Carlos Basham, Gregory Rousseau can maybe play on Efe Obata, can maybe play on those earlier downs. So guys like Mario Addison and Jerry Hughes can be at full strength and pin
I like
their
how you
ears
throw
back
Obata
on
in
those-
there,
on
like
those-
sneakily.
Yeah, he's been throwing
sneakily
Obata in there.
putting him
Will
in your
it-
53 man.
will it into existence because I love Efe Obata. I love his story. And that's gonna be another thing this year when we talk about training camp, like Matt Breida, Efe Obata, Forrest Lamp. There are a ton of guys, Tyrell Adams. There are a ton of guys the Buffalo Bills signed to 1-year deals that could easily be out of here just as quickly as they are in here. And I've grown attached to all of them, so it's really gonna hurt. There's gonna be some tears shed on roster cutdown day. Kim Boomhauer coming in saying, do you think our tight ends will get more looks this year with teams focusing on the receiving core? I personally don't think they'll get more looks, but I think they'll take better advantage of the looks they get. I think Dawson Knox will get the same amount of targets, but be a similar type of player. And I think Jacob Hollister will contribute. And I think they'll both make some really good chunk plays this year and take more advantage of the targets they get more so than get good targets. What are your
Listen
guys'
to this. I mean, I agree. Dawson Knox got 44 targets last year, only caught 24 balls. So you're talking about like he's barely over a 50% catch rate as far as targets to catches. Meanwhile, you look at a guy like Cole Beasley, 107 targets, caught 82 of them, right? So if you can get that number up to somewhere around even 2/3 for Knox, right? It doesn't have to be that 80% number like a Beasley's going to get because he's so good, right? But if you can get him up to that 2/3 number, make him a little bit more efficient with those targets. And you could see those 44 targets maybe turn into, instead of 24 catches, like I said, maybe he can catch 35 passes this year. I would caution that, we shouldn't expect all of a sudden Knox to catch 50 balls, but I think you're right, more efficient with the targets, get rid of some of those dropsies, get a little more yak in there, make the most out of all of his catches. He could be a guy that catches 35 balls and pushes 350, 400 yards this year and becomes a red zone threat. Same for Hollister. Hollister can fill that Tyler Kroft role. We saw Kroft get targeted in the red zone a decent amount last year. We know he had the touchdown against Seattle, I believe it was, or no, 2 against the Rams, was it? Or was it 1 against Seattle, 1 against the Rams? I can't remember. And obviously he had the game winner against the Rams. So he was just one of those guys that had to battle injuries throughout his time here, but Hollister could fill that role. Efficiency is the name of the game for me with the tight ends, and red zone is the name of the game for me with tight ends. So statistically, hey, maybe Knox catches 35 balls, or maybe he catches 30 balls, but maybe he has 7 touchdowns. Like, you know what I mean? So that's where I'm kind of looking for the boon in production from the tight ends.
Kendall, what are your thoughts on the tight ends? More targets this year, or just more effective than the targets, more the same? What are you expecting from the tight end room?
I think it's about efficiency and the effectiveness with that, lack of opportunity that they get. I think it's not outlandish to think Knox goes up to like 50 targets from 44. Like that's not a major increase or anything like that. But I think I've alluded to this a couple times. And Steve, you actually just watched the Colts game, so you can affirm me on this. But I think we started to see a lot more of manufactured looks for Knox. Looks off of like that touchdown to him where it's like, oh, is it a run? Is it a pass from Allen? And then it goes to him in the short right corner of the end zone. We saw a lot more of those manufactured looks where you see Knox kind of leaking out into the flats, and it's a much easier catch and then run after the catch, which is where he excels. I think we're going to see a lot more of those manufactured looks, those easy looks to Knox early in the season so he can get some confidence, get his feet under him. And then we're going to start to see him leak more into that intermediate to deep vertical passing game, like seeing him streak up through the middle and actually make some plays in the middle of the field like Travis Kelce. But I think it's going to be baby steps. I don't think we're going to see that right away, but I think he will be a little bit more effective.
Yeah. A couple of great comments came in that I didn't notice because I was holding on to that. I had pinned that comment to transition to it, but a couple of great comments about how stunts take longer from our previous segment there.
Yeah.
How stunts take longer to get to the quarterback, how stunts make it harder to stop the run or play in the run game. So I think like stunts and things like that are like the down and distance, like 3rd and 14, 3rd and 15. Like that's when you're going to see it.
Yeah.
But I think you'd be highly effective and can keep, can force
Exactly.
bad plays, force turnovers, et cetera, et cetera. Chris S coming to the question, who will be the game 1 starting cornerback? I think all the universe is in the favor of Levi Wallace.
Mhm.
I'm gonna go with Dane Jackson, but also with the understanding that I'm probably wrong. What are your guys' betting favorite? Kendall, I'll start with you for CB2 this season.
I mean, if I'm betting, it's Levi Wallace, but like if I'm betting with my heart, it's Dane Jackson. I'm buying all the praise from this preseason right now. There's just been too much put out there by like the coaching staff and Brandon Beane and other people on the staff talking about how great Dane has been, even since day one. So yeah, dating back to last year, not just this year. So I want it to be Dane, but if I'm betting, I think it's Levi Wallace.
Dave,
Yeah, I mean, my heart wants Dane, right? It's the same story we were just talking about with Stevenson and the unknown. I even talked about this with Dane Jackson compared to Levi Wallace on a few shows back. The unknown, is the higher ceiling of a Dane Jackson that you have in your heart that you want it to pan out, right?
Right.
Levi Wallace has started 35 games for this team over the last several seasons, so that can't be discounted. He keeps, as Leslie Frazier said, fending off competition, and he's never backed down from it. So the betting favorite right now has got to be Levi Wallace, but I think I don't even know if it's most.
He just leaves something to be desired, seemingly.
There are a lot of Levi Wallace fans out there too in the Bills
Yeah.
Mafia community, but like for me, my heart wants Dane Jackson just because I like the idea of the unknown potentially having a higher ceiling, because you can always go back to Levi Wallace, right? Like, and you can always go back to that steadiness that he brings, which is not a bad thing. I'm not trying to say it's a bad thing. I'm just trying to say, like, we can take a swing at a higher ceiling. If it's not there, so be it. We can go back to Levi. And so that to me means that Levi will probably start the season out as the starter. Dane will probably mix in like they did with Norman last year when they rotated Wallace and Norman. They'll probably rotate Wallace and Dane, I would guess. And if Dane shows well, then he'll get more playing time. And, he may be the starter by however many games into the season.
I feel like I almost feel like, a little rom-com analogy here. CB2 is that sort of like, Levi Wallace is that, like in the movie where there's always the hot chick, or like in this case, the CB2 position. And Levi Wallace is always the best friend who's there as a shoulder to cry on, to lean on, support.
He's always the bridesmaid, never the bride.
Yeah, but he's always being he's always being overlooked. He's always being overlooked. And Dane Jackson is that like, big hunky guy, works out with Aaron Donald, coming in looking big, looking bad.
Do we have a shot of his pecs yet?
I don't think we do yet. We'll get that there.
Looking flashy, with his interceptions and OTAs. But I think maybe at the end of the day, even though I picked Dane Jackson, I think at the end of the day, just like at the end of those movies, the chick's gonna end up with the guy who's been there all along, Levi Wallace. But Jason Taylor coming in and saying, how much playing time do you really think Greg Rousseau is actually going to get? I think we're expecting too much out of him. And I was actually looking for. I
agree with that.
I was, and I'll give you a chance to speak in a second, but I was clipping a promo for Rico's show because I put it out on the podcast network this morning. His interview with Gregory Rousseau. Talk about a guy who can land the big fish. Rico getting Gregory Rousseau, and just absolutely phenomenal interview again. Like the man just has a way to converse the players. It's phenomenal. But one of the things he said was, it was like, hey, just describe Eric Washington real quick. And he was describing Eric Washington and all the different things that Eric Washington was showing him, all the different new things he was teaching him, all those different things. And no offense to the Miami Hurricanes, like they're an NCAA team, they're ACC. Manny Diaz isn't exactly known as like an alpha in the NCAA coaching world. For the first time in his life, Gregory Rousseau is maybe getting some like premier,
put some respect on the ACC.
Professional coaching. Maybe it's sort of like a Matt Milano situation where he just gets slowly worked in, and by mid-season, he is playing more than we think. I think early on he's a niche player. I don't know if we're expecting too much from him, at least in the content creator community. Haitian Sensation was what Rico wants to get started, but I don't expect too much from Gregory Rousseau. To me, he's a niche pass rusher year one. If he can turn into more than that by halfway through the year, I'm excited. I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts, Dave?
No, I think that's what my expectation is, right? I mean, we look at AJ Epinesa last year, who by many accounts was a very polished player coming in, right? I mean, experience on that Iowa defensive line, those guys playing that sort of you know, pro style, if you will, sort of system. And Rousseau coming in this year, is he going to match the 27% like of snaps that AJ Epinesa got last year? I mean, that was pretty low for a guy that we thought maybe was a little bit more ready than Rousseau was at the same time. So I wouldn't be surprised. I think someone mentioned 25% snaps in the comment section. That's fine with me if it's 25%. If it's pass rushing downs and that's what we're going to kind of use him for early on in his career as he's kind of learning the ropes, then let him learn, let him work on pass rushing downs, and then let him develop as a run defender. And if that means he's only going to get 25% of the snaps, use them wisely, right? And use them where you need to, because we saw same thing with Epinesa last year as he got more playing time as the season was on. We all thought he kind of looked better and better as games wore on. So hopefully Rousseau can follow that model. Although I know fans probably hope that he can do a little bit more than maybe AJ did last year. So I kind of I do understand where people are coming from with that. So I mean, I'm kind of like, I'd like him to do more than AJ did last year, but
Yeah.
I would also not be surprised if that's what he did, given how he did miss a season and he really only played one full season with Miami. So,
Kendall, what are your thoughts on Rousseau and his impact year one?
I got a couple of thoughts. I'm going to echo what you said, Till. I think it's going to be a very similar thing to Epinesa because of different reasons. What happened to Epinesa was obviously the weight thing. Like, who he was in college, he was a high floor player and he was someone that could immediately impact this team, but they wanted to change what he was. So it took a little time for him to get his feet under him. So I see a very similar path to playing time. Sorry, not path to playing time, but a very similar path for Rousseau, because I think he's going to start a little bit slower, but he's going to get up to, that like 30% mark in each game, at least by the halfway point in the season. I actually think the real thing that's going to hold Rousseau back from playing time might be Epinesa's development. I think Rousseau actually has a really good shot of getting on the field for rundowns. I actually really like him in the running game. That length makes it really easy for him to disengage from blockers and make tackles. I like him a lot more than Basham when it comes to defending the run. I don't know if they plan on having him do that on the edge and set the edge or not, but I do like him in the run. So I think he's going to see some opportunities to get on the field more than just that third down situational pass rusher role. But yeah, like I said, I actually think the main thing that's going to take snaps away from him is how much Epinesa and Basham take away from him, because we've heard everything from this coaching staff talking about how intelligent this guy is. And you saw it in that interview with Rico, like, this dude's a quick learner. You don't have to tell him anything twice. You tell him something once, he's very coachable and he's going to do the right thing after that. Eric Washington talked about it in the embedded thing, like that this is his best interview he's seemingly ever had with a defensive end or whatever defensive line prospect. All of these things, I think I don't think it's interesting, because we're probably expecting too much because he's a first round draft pick. But I think we've also all tempered expectations because he's a unique first round draft pick. So it's really hard to say if he's being underrated or overrated right now. But I think like a 30% snap share, 35% snap share, that's where I'd probably peg him at for year's end.
Yeah. Before we transition on to the next question from Chris Janke here, we got about 180 of you guys in the chat. So super appreciate everyone who comes in here and listens. Like I said many a times before, you guys make this show. I mean, this show is wrapped up and done in like 45 minutes. If not for the insight, the topics, the questions that you guys bring, if you could do us a favor, all 180 of you, we got 66 likes right now. If you could smash that like button, you could like, subscribe, and share Super appreciate it. Helps with a whole bunch of algorithm and math things on YouTube that I do not understand. But if you could smash that like button, we'd be super grateful. So thank you so much for that. And on to the next question here from Chris Janke. This is a good one. I like this question. Who is this year's Del'Shawn Phillips? Now, guys, I saw this question. I haven't even read some of the newer comments, and I do apologize for that because I've been honing in on this one, ready for the next segment. That's one thing. I wish we could like pin ones so I could go back to them. We're gonna have to get with the StreamYard people on that. But who is this year's Del'Shawn Phillips? I immediately thought like, Tariq Thompson. I don't know if that counts because we fucking amped up Tariq Thompson so much during the pre-draft process. I immediately started thinking of like Jake Krumero, but Jake Krumero was on the active roster last year. Like, I feel like this has got to be a deep pull from you guys here. A deep pull. I'm going with Nate Becker. I think that Nate Becker is a guy who could upend either a Tommy Sweeney or a Reggie Gilliam, a guy who has been on the practice squad for a couple of years now. He understands the process. He got a chance to play last year in that Miami game. I'm going with Nate Becker. Do any of you guys have a deep pull? Dave, you have a deep pull for this year's? It's got to be deep. It's got to be deep for Del'Shawn Phillips. And people in the comment section, what's your deep pull here? What is your deep pull as this year's Del'Shawn Phillips? But Dave, I'll start with you.
Bobby, no, I'm just kidding.
Just put the nail in your coffin.
No, obviously everyone knows I'm kidding about that. God, man, I'm just looking at the roster right now, and I'll fine, deep pull, same position. Quentin Morris maybe could make the team.
Ooh, okay. All right.
Like tight end to me is just one of those groups where it has the most opportunity for someone to sneak up and take a spot from a Sweeney maybe, or maybe they take a Gilliam spot.
Josh Thomas is a good one in year 2. Jaquan Johnson, DeMar Hamlin, Tariq Thompson is his competition. Nick McLeod.
Nick McLeod, NC State guy. I don't know why I didn't.
I don't know. Click that. That was mine.
Know if it'll be CB2. You're gonna go. Okay, Nick McLeod. Then.
I didn't show him enough respect. The former NC State player transferred to Notre Dame. He did have a pretty bad injury before he transferred. But I don't know. He's good. He is good. He is a good player.
I respect you, comment section. I don't know if Tyrell Adams,
that's not deep
guy
enough.
Who had like 100+ tackles last year, is deep enough. So, Kendall, you were going to mention Nick McLeod. Explain Nick McLeod here.
Yeah, no, I think I'm picking Nick McLeod not to be CB2, but I think he could make this cornerback room for sure. I think he's that cornerback that has that size, length, and athleticism mix that we've been wanting at that cornerback 2 spot. I don't think he's ready to do that right away, but he does have some polish to his game. It's weird because you juxtapose him next to like a Cam Lewis and Elijah Griffin and a Rashad Wildgoose. I think all of those guys are going to have to do something on special teams. And I think Wildgoose and McLeod probably have the best chance to do something, specifically gunner. I actually think McLeod ran, I believe, under a 4.5 40, and that was at his pro day, obviously post ACL tear. It was an ACL tear. But he looked good at NC State.
Reminds me of Kevin Johnson. That's kind of who I think of him as. Yeah. Like we liked Kevin Johnson here for a little bit. I think he's a little more athletic than Kevin Johnson. Although Kevin Johnson was the first round pick, so it's pretty wild, right?
It goes to show how much an injury can really derail you in that draft process, especially in a year like this year or even last year, where like that medicals, like it's really tough to get those checked out. So Nick McLeod. I'm like really invested in this question now. So I've actually have the Our Lads Buffalo Bills depth chart pulled up. I'm going to pull up all the guys I consider to be Del'Shawn Phillips-esque. Lance Lenoir or Brandon Powell as the kick return specialist could pull an upset at wide receiver. Jordan Devey as an interior offensive lineman. Yeah, that's another good.
Steven Gonzalez as an interior offensive lineman. Cyrus Tuatelli, the UDFA from Fresno State. I would put Davis Webb in the category of Del'Shawn Phillips. Like if Davis Webb was the third quarterback over Jake Fromm, I consider that a Del'Shawn Phillips-esque surprise.
Trayvon Hester could be a Del'Shawn Phillips.
Yeah. Trayvon Hester. Looking at some of these other guys.
Obata's not deep enough.
Brandon
not a dude.
Brandon Bryant, maybe Mike Love. I love Mike Love, by the way. All love for Mike Love. But man, with all the DNs we've added, I just don't know.
Yeah.
This was a lot more like not easier, but this was a lot like more of like a open book when like the team wasn't good.
Yeah, these are good problems to have trying to figure out this guy this year.
Joe Giles Harris, Mike Bell, and Markel Lee. I think I would add Nick McLeod and Josh Thomas. I think that's about it. I think that is about it.
And what percentage, like all those guys you just mentioned, was it probably like
Elijah Griffin too? Yes, very good.
15 or so names. Like, what is the percentage chance that you would put that even any one of those 15 guys makes the team? It's got to be like less than 5%.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
No, if it's any one
max.
of those guys, I feel like mathematically it has to be higher than 5% because you're then like 13, 15 guys with a shot to make one roster spot. Mathematically, I feel like it's above 5%.
If you're talking about, but that's if you're talking about each player has an equal chance to make the team.
Good point.
Right? Which we know is not true. So
it's not.
I don't know, man. It's still a low percentage.
Yeah, it's low. It's low.
I don't know. I like that. Lance Lenoir looks kind of jacked too. So like,
he does.
I went on Twitter and I actually like looked up. One of my favorite things to do once we sign a guy I've never heard of is to like search the name in Twitter and see what fan bases of previous teams had said about him. And according to Cowboys Twitter, from the videos and clips people are showing from training camp and from the comments, Lance Lenoir was a like training camp favorite, like a Brandon Riley type of player.
Boy. Here we go.
To the Dallas Cowboys the last couple of years. So once we start getting into training camp, once more, searching for the PEX picks. Once we start getting into training camp and more videos become accessible, you start to get like Matthew Fairburn and Joe B and Matt Perino's camp notes, even though they can't tell you who's playing where. Like once you start seeing some clips, a guy like Lance Lenoir, who's got kick and punt return flex, could start moving up the Buffalo Bills Mafia popularity board. I'm going to, I'm going to stand Lance Lenoir for the next 15 seconds, then forget he exists until training camp. But who knows? Because again, Joe Marino on his podcast this morning was great podcast, great 30 minutes, well worth your time. Locked On Bills. The last 5 minutes he focused on what are the team's weaknesses? Like how do we get worse? Number one with a bullet is kick and punt return. There's so many question marks now. You went from having the safest punt returner in the league in Andre Roberts, maybe arguably the second best behind Cordarrelle Patterson, the second best kick and punt return in the league, to Isaiah McKenzie, who had that touchdown last year, but also has a history of muffs. And muffs. Marquez Stevenson, Lance Lenoir, Brandon Powell, Matt Breida, Christian Wade, like, what?
That's what I'm saying, man. We need to appreciate Andre Roberts here for a second. Even though Truth to Hearts thinks he just runs in a straight line. He ran in a straight line really well.
Running in a straight line is what you need from a kick returner. You want him to pick up all the yards that he can get. Getting shifty and wiggly is good, but you need to do it in the right spots. If you do it too much, you're getting tackled at the 15-yard line.
Let me just say this, and it's not at all like the same comparison, but I did kick returns in high school, and my coach would get so pissed at me if, as I was getting up to the scrum, right, of where like all the blocks and everything were converging, if I slowed down and tried to like make a guy miss, he's like, no, like that's not what kick returns are. He's like, you need to find one crease, you cannot slow down, and you need to go in it. And if it closes, it closes. If it doesn't, it doesn't. You cannot sit there and pretend like you're a running back and try to make a guy miss and like break down and lose all the momentum you had. Yeah. So there's something to be said about running in a straight line, I will say.
Roman Bobak coming in saying, can we have an entire show dedicated to Bills?
We should bring Ryan Sullivan on.
Well, here's how I will. Yeah. Here's what I'm going to do, Roman. I'm going to find every single Buffalo Bills player, all 90 of them. I'm going to find their Instagram, their Twitter, their Facebook, whatever. And I'm going to DM them asking them for a peck pick. And once I get all 90 peck picks in, then we will do a show Can you picture that? Like who in Bills Mafia is blocked by most of Buffalo Bills players? Oh, Judge, because he won't stop asking for pictures of people's packs.
This was a good question, actually, to get the show back on the rails for the last minute or so here. If some team has an injury at QB, does Trubisky become a trade chip? I say no. Trubisky is our insurance policy, not an insurance policy for another team just to trade him. He's our insurance policy for Josh Allen this year. We've already talked about how in another show how we feel like we can still win games and potentially still win games in the playoffs if it happens to come to that with Trubisky. And so for me, unless you get blown away and someone's willing to give you like a first or second round pick, which they're not going to, I don't think he's a trade chip. That's just me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm with you, and you know I'm very loud coming in saying, can we stop talking about can we stop talking about trading Trubisky? I'm with you. Like we've had this conversation. We had this conversation on the quarterback show a couple of weeks ago. Like literally, if Josh Allen goes down, we're still a playoff team with Mitch Trubisky. Why would you give that up? Are we a playoff team with Jake Fromm? Are we a playoff team with Davis Webb? No. Are we a playoff team with Matt Barkley? No. So,
can you guys see what that says?
No one can see what that says.
Oh, my wife texted me as she heard me saying that, and she said, "Trubisky sucks for the devil face interception king." She's a Packers fan, so she's seen him. Right. She's seen him a lot but she's also now a Bills fan. So hey, I don't know what to make of that comment.
My wife only hears like during really like unfortunate times when I'm saying something stupid as hell. Like I remember one time I was like, I've never done cocaine, but I feel like this is what it would feel like after one of our wins last year. I think it was like after the Seahawks game or something. And she just
how does it feel, by the way, to be saying that? Like my wife, does it feel
I've
nice?
called her my fiance about 10 times in the last 2 weeks, in the last week. But she just opened the door and she looked at me. She's like, "You fucking idiot! Like you were in the internet."
Man.
Not yet. We're still young though. I'm sure as the years progress, you probably will. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, this has been a solid hour and a half this evening. If you guys have anything else you want to talk about, let us know. Maybe we can hit a few other questions as we go. But if not, I think today's been another success. We're going to talk about the tight ends on Thursday, and what was the opponent next on the list?
I believe it's the Titans.
Oh yeah, we're gonna tighten up. We're gonna tighten up on Thursday and talk about the Titans a little bit.
Kind of Titans makes sense. Just saying.
Maybe we should have switched that and done the Titans today, because I know we had a Titans fan on like right at the beginning of the show. He came on, said tighten up, and then left.
Saw Julio Jones in the title.
Yeah. Oh, maybe that's it. See, I'm getting really good at that, like putting keywords in the title. I remember
Titans.
You're an SEO master now.
This last season, people can ask me, they're like, "Why are you putting the names of like your opponents? Like, why do you make sure the name is in every title?"
That's
why.
And
I'm like, because I want their asses in this comment section.
Yeah.
I want the Dolphins fans in here. I want the Jets fans in here. I want the Pets fans in here. I want to stir the fucking pot. That's what I want to do. So, yeah, Chris, we're gonna get ready. We're working with Chris Janke on getting him here for a guest spot. So that'll be really exciting as well. But ladies and gentlemen, seriously, Buffalo Fanatics has you covered this offseason. I'm super jealous right now of Z-Bot, Clay, and Bryce.
I'm out of the loop, man. I don't know any of this stuff's going on. I just like find out after. I'm like, oh, our guys were talking with Deion Dawkins. Great. I'm just like, okay.
Deion, Harrison, Devin, Levi. A nice little conversation with Josh Allen. By little, I mean very little. But it seriously, like, so we're going to be dropping those interviews soon. You're going to have Rico report tomorrow night. You're going to have Smoke Break on Wednesday. We'll be back on Thursday. We have Rico on Friday. Over the weekend, Kendall, you're doing the film room with Clay on Saturdays. You're doing the writer's room on Sunday. So we got you covered 7 days a week here on the Buffalo Fanatics YouTube. You can always catch the NFL Basement on Thursdays. You can catch Nap Knows Buffalo with some guy named Casey Reed that honestly he's just a guy. Really, if you think about it. On Fridays, You got 585 report with our main guys, Ryan Sullivan and Mitch Broder on Saturday. And then Sunday, you got the Buffalo Bootlegs. We got you covered, the podcasting network and the articles galore. Kendall, your article will be dropping tomorrow. So many articles. I know Trish, our London correspondent, our England correspondent, wrote a great piece today on Christian Wade and F.A. Obata. So check out buffalofanatics.com. Check out our podcasting network. Stay right here on the YouTube. Subscribe, share, comment. Yeah. Obviously join the text club. Got a bunch of great giveaways going on there. The Instagram god, Bobby's got all the good things covered for you there. So anything before we go, gentlemen, anything before we go?
I'm good to go, man. I think we covered it all today.
Who's Johnny Bananas? Anyone got that one for me?
I don't even know. I don't know the reference.
It sounds funny though.
I'm gonna Google that, and if it's something offensive, Randy, I'm gonna enter your DMs on Twitter. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Until next time, go Bills.
Go Bills.
Go Bills.